polls. First of all, Washington Post poll on Monday, great news for you. A huge lead in the Republican field. Quinnipiac poll came out today, though, not so good news for you. In the general election voters, Colorado, Iowa, Virginia, you have the worst favorability ratings of anyone, Republican or Democrat. Negative favorability ratings of almost 2-1. Hillary Clinton also did badly.
I haven't seen it. I really don't know. I haven't seen it.
Do negative favorability ratings worry you?
I don't think so. I mean, I've turned a lot of them around. And as you know, in North Carolina, it was negative, and now it's like tremendously positive. And when people hear what I say about the vets and how strong my commitment is to the vets, they've been treated so badly, and to the border, which is just horrible. I mean, every time people listen to me, all of a sudden it becomes very favorable. A good example would be North Carolina, where it's so positive. I haven't seen that, but I think generally speaking, we're doing very well, and certainly we're doing well in the ABC Washington Post poll and every other poll that I've seen in the last couple of weeks.
So you think you can turn around, because a lot of people say, look, that those kind of unfavorability ratings, that does not bode well. You think you can turn that around?
I don't know. I mean, who knows? I'm doing this for the good of the country. Somebody has to do it. Politicians are never going to turn this country around. Our country's a mess. The politicians are going to destroy this country. They're weak and they're ineffective, and they're controlled by the lobbyists and the special interests. So, well, I have no idea.
You talk about the lobbyists and the special interests, though. You and I talked last time. You've given a lot of money to politicians over the years. You give it to Democrats, you give it to Republicans. Aren't you part of the problem?
I would, absolutely, 100%. Absolutely. I was on the other side. They will do whatever I want up until you decide to run.
So isn't that hypocritical to say, oh, this is a problem, but I'm going to make the most of this problem?
It's called playing the game. I was a businessman. I made a fortune. I made a lot of money. I posted over $10 billion.
So in order to make money, it's okay to play the game?
Well, it's called your life. I mean, I'm a businessman, and I contribute to people, and they treat me nicely and everything else. And
so how do you change that? How do you change that culture of money for access?
Look, I just read an article where Bush is meeting with all these lobbyists in Washington, has a meeting with all these lobbyists. Every one of those lobbyists that gives money, they expect something for it. And that's a bad thing.
Don't you have lobbyists, though?
Absolutely. I've had lobbyists, and I've had some very good ones. They could do anything. They can take a politician and have them jump off this ledge.
Can you actually change that culture of corruption?
Well, you can, in the sense that the top person can't be bought. I'm worth far too much money. I don't need anybody's money. I'm not running with anybody's money. I'm spending my own money. But the lobbyists they totally control these politicians. Just take a look. In one of the articles, very recently, I see Bush with the lobbyists, and he's sitting there with all of these people. They're totally telling him what to do, like a little puppet. And the same with Hillary, and the same with everybody else. Now, when I'm in business, I'm part of that game. When I'm in this, I now know. When somebody
comes, jump back and forth, though? I mean, can
you
really be a guy who says,
I
look,
am able to do that.
That's not hypocritical.
Not at all. Look, I've made a lot of money. A lot.
I've heard.
And I don't need money. And I don't need money to run. I don't need $5,000 here, $10,000. These guys are desperate for money. I don't need it. I'm going to do what's right for the country.
Who'd run your business if you're president?
My children and executives. I have very good executives and great children. They're very good.
Talking yesterday, Jeb Bush said, if we embrace this language of divisiveness and ugliness, we'll never win.
Well, when you say divisive, okay?
No, he said.
No, but you're quoting him.
Yeah.
So when you quote divisive,
right.
I mean, I get called all these horrible names by Lindsey Graham, who I don't even know. I didn't start it with Lindsey Graham. I couldn't care less about Lindsey Graham. He's registered at, I think, 0 in the poll. By Rick Perry from Texas, who was up in my office a few years ago. I just posted a picture of him shaking my hand, looking for money and looking for support. And he was up, people say, I call it hypocrite. But they're saying horrible things like, I don't even know these people, and they're saying these. Now, am I supposed to, just say, oh, it's okay for them to say, one guy, I guess it was Lindsey Graham, called me a jackass. So am I supposed to say, oh, it's okay if I'm called a jackass? I'm called a jackass. You have to fight back. The country has to fight back. Everyone's pushing our country around. We can't allow that, Anderson.
Is it presidential, though?
I think it's presidential to fight back.
To give out a personal phone number of an opponent.
Well, that was a long story. I mean, you have to see the whole story, the way it morphed, okay? That was a whole story where he wanted to get on Fox and Friends, and he called me up out of the blue. I never met the guy. Then he wanted to come in for campaign contributions. He gave me his first, and then he starts hitting me years later, and I happened to have this crazy phone number, and I held it up. I said, this guy was over here, and actually, as you probably know, the room was packed. It was standing room only. In fact, they had other theaters. There was overflow crowds. They had all sorts of closed-circuit television into other rooms. The place went wild. We all had a good time.
But Is that presidential?
I think so. I
Is
think
that
it's
something,
fine.
as president, when you're opposed by somebody in Congress, you would give out their personal phone number?
I was hit by somebody unfairly. I was called names by somebody. So he was up, there's somebody that's hitting me saying what a bad guy I am, was up in my office asking for money and asking if I can get him on television.
If you're president of the United States, you're going to be hit by half the country. That's probably not going to like you.
That's true.
Are you going to call them dumb, stupid?
No, I think it's a little bit different. Right now, I'm trying to do something to make the country great again.
So, as
Politicians will never make this country great again. Now,
as president, you would change your tone.
Oh, I think so. I think I'd deal very differently.
Do you have the temperament to be president? That's what I mean. That's the question that Jeb Bush was really raising about the divisiveness, about the language. I mean, like you have a no prisoners approach. Somebody attacks you.
No, I don't have that. I'm very different than you would think. Right now, I'm fighting because I'm number one in the polls by far, and I'm being attacked on all sides. When you're attacked, you have to, in my opinion,
you're going to be attacked all the time.
Excuse me. In my opinion, yeah, but this isn't the same thing. In my opinion, when attacked, you have to, defend and attack back, okay? I'm being attacked by certain people. Actually, Bush, I think he's probably a nice guy. I don't think he has the temperament. And by that, he is a nice guy, but he doesn't have the temperament. You know why? He's too low-key. He's too laid back. Can you imagine Bush negotiating with China? You want to talk about temperament, I'll introduce you to the Chinese. They have temperament. But can you imagine Bush negotiating trade deals with China?
His brother, George W. Bush, when he was running, said that he would be a uniter, not a divider. What would you be?
I think I'd be a great uniter. We're not united now. We have a president that, whether people love him or hate him, the world is a mess. Hillary Clinton, by the way, was the worst Secretary of State in the history of this country, in my opinion. But we have a president right now, doesn't get along with Russia, doesn't get along with anybody. I mean, the only one he gets along with is Iran, and even that's sort of very suspect because they want to blow everybody up.
Back in 2007 or 2008, I saw a quote on Wolf Blitzer. You said to him that Hillary Clinton surrounds herself with smart people, and she'd probably be a good negotiator against Iran.
Maybe she could be, but I don't think so. I don't think so. I know her very well. And again, when I'm in the private sector and I'm a businessman, I like everybody because I have to deal with these people. I'm not going to go and attack people. I have to deal with these people.
So Donald Trump as president would be a different Donald Trump than we've seen on the campaign trail.
Take a look at the world today. Who do we get along with? We get along with almost nobody. Our allies are decimated. We did a stupid thing in Iraq by going in. And you know that in 2004, I was totally against going in. If you look, July of 2004, Reuters, probably stuff before that. But July of 2004, Bush actually sent a group to talk to me because I was getting a lot of publicity on the fact that we shouldn't be doing Iraq. I am the most militaristic person, but you have to know when to use the military. I said, you will decimate this country and you'll create an imbalance in the Middle East like you've never seen before. That's what's happened. And I said, Iran will take over Iraq and the second largest oil reserves in the world. And I also said, and other groups will take over that'll be worse than Saddam Hussein. You know what happened, Anderson? It's ISIS. They took over the oil.
Have you ever publicly acknowledged making a mistake?
Well, look, everyone makes mistakes. Do I publicly acknowledge making a mistake?
Have you ever said, you know what, I made a mistake, sorry about that?
Yes, I mean, I don't think about it. I don't like to make too many mistakes.
Well, from there, we talked about Donald Trump's religious faith, something essentially lost. I want to ask you about faith, because you talked about this on Saturday at this Faith and Values Forum, and I think a lot of people haven't heard you talk about it and were really interested.
Okay, fine.
In Iowa.
And by the way, I was very well received. I had the biggest standing ovation, and it was really a great day. It was really a great day.
And a lot of people didn't focus on it because they got caught up in the whole McCain thing. You said at the Faith Forum, when asked if you've ever asked forgiveness from God, you said, I'm not sure I have. I just go on and try to do a better job from there. I don't think so. And that surprised some people of faith.
I don't think so. You know, and then I said communion. I go to communion, and that's asking forgiveness. You know, in my opinion.
For you, that's what communion
it's a form of asking for forgiveness, yes, communion. And I go to church a lot, and I'm Protestant, I'm Presbyterian.
But the idea of asking for forgiveness, that's not a central, is that a central tenet for you? Or is that something that just...
I like to work where I don't really have to ask for... I like to do the right thing where I don't have to actually ask for forgiveness. Does that make sense to you? You know, where you don't make such bad things that you don't have to ask for forgiveness. I mean, I try and lead a life where I don't have to ask God for forgiveness. But I'm Protestant, I'm Presbyterian, which a lot of people are surprised to hear. I go to church. The great Norman Vincent Peale was my minister for years, the Power of Positive Thinking. It was fantastic. And
so for forgiveness, that notion of forgiveness, that's not a central.
well, I try not to make mistakes where I have to ask for forgiveness, for one thing. So when I'm asked a question like that, it's like, I don't like to make a lot of mistakes.
So, and I would never ask the detail, but the idea of repentance, is that something that's important to you?
I think repenting is terrific.
But,
it's great.
but do you feel the need to?
If I make a
to me,
mistake,
that's part of
if I
forgiveness.
make a mistake, yeah, I think it's great. But I try not to make mistakes. I mean, why do I have to, repent? Why do I have to ask for forgiveness if you're not making mistakes? I work hard. I'm an honorable person. I have thousands of people that work for me. I've employed tens of thousands of people over the years.
You give millions to charity.
I built the Vietnam Memorial in Lower Manhattan with a small group of people.
At the Faith Forum, you talked about communion, the Eucharist, the Lord's Supper, different faiths call
Right.
it different things. You said that you drink my little wine and have my little cracker.
We were having fun. The room laughed. We
No,
were
I'm just
all
saying,
together.
but some people of faith there
They didn't.
said
Look,
that they
didn't say that at all.
Well-
when I left, I saw people. I got the biggest ovation of the weekend. I saw people, and I saw how a couple of reporters made a big deal out of that. We were having fun when I said, I drink the wine, I eat the cracker. But we're
Eric?
talking about communion. And you know what? The whole room was laughing. And they're religious people, and they're great people. They're great people. But the whole room was laughing.
Eric Erickson of Red State said, that based on your comments about faith on Saturday, that it's, quote, largely closed the books on evangelical support. Do you
I
believe
don't
that?
think so, because I just saw polls in Iowa that I'm doing really well. I mean, in terms of Iowa, where it's a very big group of people, I'm doing really
Although
well.
the Quinnipiac poll in Iowa among general voters.
I don't know. You keep bringing up negative. You only want to talk about negative. Why don't you bring up the positive
Well,
polls?
I did.
I mean, you start off. Excuse me.
I started off with
you
the
start
Washington
off with
Post
the
poll.
interview.
No, I started off with the Washington
I don't
Post
know.
poll.
You start off the interview with a poll that I didn't even know existed.
I started off with the Washington Post
Okay,
poll
yeah.
intentionally because I knew
Sure,
you would accuse me of that.
Sure. All I know is every poll I'm leading in, and you give me these two polls where it's different states.
All
They're
right.
not even a national
We'll check
poll.
the record. I started
Oh,
off
I'm
with
sure
the
the
Washington
record's
Post poll
fine.
where you are way out in front.
I think it's very unfair. You're talking to me a poll I never even saw. It's not
No,
even
it's
a
today.
poll.
It's a
not
Quinnipiac
even a
poll. Okay.
It's on 3 different states, and you're hitting me with this.
Okay.
And I think frankly, I think it's a very fair question.
Okay.
I think it's an extremely. You start off the interview with that. You don't say I led in the Fox poll. I'm leading in the ABC
You're
Washington
leading-
Post
you're
poll.
leading across the board.
Well, you did. I am leading across the board.
Right.
And then you hit me with this poll that I didn't even see before, where, oh, gee, it's not even that kind of a poll. All I know is I have a very big group of support. And I think one of the
among
reasons is that,
Republicans, you're way
let
out
me
in
tell you,
front.
the people don't trust you, and the people don't trust the media.
Right.
And I understand why.
politicians.
I've always been covered fairly accurately because it was usually a financial press. And, numbers are numbers, okay? And my numbers happen to be great. So I was always sort of treated like fair. With the media, it's, in not all cases, some of the political media is great and really honest. Even if they don't want to be, they're really honest. But I find that 60-70% of the political media is really, really dishonest. And I tell the story, the American dream. I talk about the American dream in speeches. The American dream is dead, but I'm going to make it bigger and better and stronger than ever before. The American dream is dead, but I'm going to make it bigger and better, stronger than ever, right? And I go, boom, and I do it with great bravado, and the audience goes crazy. I come home, and my wife is saying, oh, darling, that was so bad. I said, what was bad? What you said today? I said, what did I say? The American dream is dead. Cut. On one of the major networks.
Oh, we covered a lot more ground than that, as you'll see in a moment. But one of the things I think they're going to hit you with, your opponents are going to hit you with, not the media, the opponents,
Go ahead.
they're going to say, you have flip-flopped. You're a decisive
Sure.
guy in business, but you've been an independent, you've been unaffiliated, you've been a Democrat, you've been a Republican, back and forth. What's up with that?
Well,
Aren't
you
you
know
a
who else
flip-flopper?
flip-flopped? A man named, my favorite, Ronald Reagan. He was a Democrat. He became a Republican.
But
He
you were also
flip-flopped.
unaffiliated, you were independent.
By the way, I was, and I also live in New York,
You were
which is
pro-choice, now you're
excuse me,
not.
well, if you look at that clip, I hate the concept of abortion, and I did it. But also, it was never. I'm a businessman. They're talking to me as a businessman about things like abortion. Nobody ever even asked me questions like that. But if you look at that clip and let it run, I talk about how I hate the concept. How I went on forever about it. But nobody would ask me questions. It's sort of like a question you don't ask. I build buildings. They're not asking me about, am I pro-choice? Am I pro-life? What am I? But, yeah, I don't use the word flip. I've evolved on a lot of different things.
The difference I have found between you and just about every other political candidate I've ever talked to is you don't come with a huge retinue, which surprises a lot of people. You talk extemporaneously. Your critics say you don't know the issues enough, but you talk.
I know the issues better than anybody
You talk
knows the
extemporaneously. Politicians are very controlled, and I think that's a huge part of your appeal. And I think it's why people enjoy their personal interaction with you. Even right now, we've gone way over the amount of time you said you wanted. Nobody has given me a signal saying wrap it up. He's got to go. So I think that's all to your credit and deserves to be pointed out.
Look, you ask me a question, I give you an answer. It's very simple. I'm a very smart person. You know, I went to the best school. I'm a very smart person, right? Let me just say. So you ask me a question, I give you an answer. I don't need pollsters like Bush and all these other people. They don't answer a question. Hillary, she can't give you an answer without going back and checking it out. I'm much richer than almost anybody. I can have thousands of pollsters. I don't have any. I don't want to waste the money.
Well, let's continue the conversation. Now we're back with Jeffrey Lohr. Joining us is the publisher of Bloomberg View, Tim O'Brien. Sandra Bland is a woman, African-American woman, who was pulled over in Texas.
I saw that.
I'm not going to ask you specifics because you can't be expected to look at everything. But pulled over for allegedly changing signals. Dash cam videos now have been released. A lot of African-Americans, a lot of people are very upset about that. To African-Americans in this country, and there's a lot of people who believe that they are treated differently by police. Do you believe that there's a problem with that? Do you
I hope not, but I will tell you, I saw that clip on your show, by the way. I thought it was terrible. I thought he was so aggressive. It was a traffic signal, as I understand it. And, you know, who gets out of a car for a traffic signal? I haven't been pulled over in a while, actually. But seriously, he just looked very aggressive. I didn't like his demeanor. I thought it was terrible, to be honest with you. And I'm a huge fan of the police. I think the police have to be given back power. But this guy was overly aggressive, terribly aggressive.
Do you think that happens to African Americans more than it does to you or I?
I hope it doesn't, but it might. And, you know, I have a great relationship with African Americans, as you possibly have heard. I just have great respect for them, and I, you know, they like me, I like them. The answer is it possibly does, it shouldn't. And it's very sad if the case is. I will say, though, in this case, I watched that so closely. I watched it a few times. He was terrible.
Well, glitches in the video released last night raised questions about whether it had been edited. Authorities said there were technical problems when they uploaded the dash. You're heading to the border tomorrow. You've made trips to the border in the past. You've been invited by a group representing Border Patrol officers. You keep saying Mexico is sending these people across.
Right. Mexico is sending. You said it properly. You said it properly.
But,
thank you.
But you've offered no proof. And that's what people say about
well,
that.
You may have proof very soon. You may have proof very soon. All you have to do is speak to some of the border people. Some of the border people told me, well, we're going to see a lot of border people
We
tomorrow.
talked to immigration officials who said, look, if they've never heard of that, there's no evidence of that. Wouldn't somebody, I mean, of all the people who've been arrested, you're telling me there wouldn't be proof by now?
Do you remember many years ago, Fidel Castro, when he emptied the prisons and sent everybody into the United States, right? Very famous, right? This is a much more sophisticated version of the same thing. Mexico doesn't want to house these people.
But there was clear evidence of that.
This animal, excuse me, this animal that killed Kate, he came across 5 times. 5 times. Now, maybe he came across because he thought the weather was nice. Maybe he was pushed across by Mexico officials. Look,
but
Mexico's leaders are much smarter and sharper and more cunning than our leaders. They're doing things that we don't even know about. Let's see what happens. I'm going to speak to a lot of people tomorrow. There are a lot of people very excited that I'm going to the border tomorrow. I may never see you again, but these are minor details.
You're telling me that one illegal immigrant wouldn't have a slip of paper or something that would indicate that he was sent?
Well, we're going to find out. We're going to say. I think it's common sense. Mexico doesn't want to house somebody for 30 years in a prison when the United States will do it.
But you keep saying everybody knows this is the case.
I think so, yeah.
I
think a lot of people know.
But there's
I
no
think the
evidence
smart people know. I think the streetwise people know. And I think border guards know. Well, you're going to find out if I have evidence. I'm not telling you now, but you're going to find out what I have. Obama, I never thought he was qualified to be president. But the one thing I thought he'd be good at is being a cheerleader for the country. Actually, he's very divisive. I really hit them hard over the last 2 days on the flags. Why aren't you for the 5 Marines that we killed? Finally, he lowered the flags. And I don't want to take credit for it, but I hit him hard. You saw that. Why doesn't he call up Kate, the parents of Kate? Why? Kate is this incredible young woman who was shot, killed by an illegal immigrant. He calls other people. They send staffs of White House people to these other funerals. They never called the parents or Brad, the brother, of Kate. Why? Why can't he put in one phone call to the parents or to the brother of Kate?
Well, it's my job to push back, as you know, on these kind of things. You didn't lower your flags until the same day that the White House chose to.
Mine were lowered the day before yesterday.
Tuesday. Same day
Whatever.
as the White House.
Well, whatever. They were lowered.
Same day as
Again,
Obama.
I'm not the United States.
You
okay?
also...
You would think that would be
I
automatic.
talked to Brad, the brother of Kate, who said that you did not call, though you had been talking about his sister and wished you had.
I spoke to him numerous times. I spoke to him last night. He's a great guy.
Right. Subsequently, you have called, but he's...
Excuse me. I
I
had to leave a period of grieving. I'm Donald Trump. I'm a private person.
You didn't want
have to have... Of course, I don't want to call the day of the murder, which is exactly by this animal that came in illegally 5 times. So I wanted to wait. And I explained that to Brad. I said, Brad, I have to tell you something. I actually saw what you said. I said, I had to leave a period of grieving. I couldn't call you. The president could call immediately. Right. The president could have called that day, the next day, or the next day. I'm a private citizen.
That's the kind of thing, as president, you feel you would do but you would be much less divisive, much more of you. That's how you would be a uniter.
I would have called, absolutely. That would be a call that you should make. You know what? It's quick. Those people are devastated. They're great people. And there are others. I had a news conference that you people covered, that CNN covered, in California with some of the most incredible people where their sons and daughters and family were killed by illegal immigrants that shouldn't have been in the country. And yes, I would call those people. I can always find time to call. One thing about me, I wouldn't be on planes doing all these fundraisers. If you're going to have fundraisers, maybe you do them someplace else. I mean, the other night in New York was shut down because Obama's here to go to a Broadway play. He's here to, you know, when you're in the White House for a limited period of time, I'd be there all the time, working.
The difference...
I wouldn't even have time to comb my hair the way I comb it. I'd probably just have to comb it back.
Well, and on that note, before we get to more of our conversation, you have talked a lot since Saturday about John McCain, the war hero thing. You did attack John McCain's record on veterans issues, and you talked about...
It's terrible for the veterans. John McCain is... I supported him for president.
Do you follow specific policy issues?
Excuse me. I raised a lot of money for John McCain. I supported him for president. He's been horrible to the veterans. And here's what I say. I'm all over the place. I go to all over, whether it's New Hampshire or Iowa or California last week. I'm all over. I meet so many veterans. These are some beautiful people. They're strong. They see me, they have tears pouring down their face. They're treated so badly by the Veterans Administration, which is corrupt and incompetent.
Yeah, and we've done tons of reporting on this, but every veterans group I've talked to has said what you said about his record on vets is just wrong. CEO of Concerned Veterans of America says it was patently false, ill-informed, says McCain, quote, has taken the lead for years.
He's been terrible
in
for
trying
the
to give
veterans.
Excuse
me. For trying. That's the word, trying.
So let me give you specifics.
Excuse me. He's trying. He's not getting the job done.
Let me give you specifics.
Because they're living in hell. They're living like third-class citizens. The hospitals are falling apart. The new hospitals are costing 4 or 5 times what they were supposed to cost, and they're not working.
So let me, because you don't talk specifics, let me give you some specifics here.
I do talk specifics.
Major legislation passed last year by John McCain on this.
And you know what it's done? The waiting list, excuse me, the waiting lists as of yesterday were longer than they've ever been in the history of the VA.
Veterans Access to Care Through Choice, Accountability, Transparency Act. Are you aware of what that did?
Excuse me, yes. And can I tell you what? The waiting list, as of yesterday it was reported, is the longest for veterans. I see them. They wait 4, 5, 6 days to see a doctor. Excuse me. And then a doctor says, I'm sorry, I can't see you. I'm going on vacation.
But you say he's done nothing. He has done things.
I don't say nothing. I say he's been very ineffective with respect to helping veterans. I see probably, I'll bet you I see, in what I've been doing over the last couple of months, more veterans than he sees, all right? They are devastated.
Your critics say you're not actually following policy issues. Are you aware of what that major legislation did last year?
Well, I think one thing it did is it took the burden off Obama's back, because that was blowing up like crazy around Obama for the horrible job he's done also, and other politicians. And by passing that legislation, and now you have the longest waits in history, but by passing that legislation, it took the burden off. People haven't been fired. There's scandals all over the
But
place.
that act actually makes it easier to fire VA officials. That act gives $500 million. It
In the
builds
meantime, it
26
hasn't
new
been
hospitals.
used, and they haven't been fired, and the VA's in worse shape than it's ever been in. It's typical political stuff. And I will tell you, the one thing with that act that's really bad, it took the burden off Obama. He was getting decimated, and that was a good thing because it showed the plight of the veterans. Veterans are being decimated.
Just this year, McCain introduced the Clay Hunt Suicide Prevention Act for American vets. Are you aware of that? Have you been following that?
I know he's introduced things, but nothing happens with them. And frankly, even when they get passed, whether it's 2 years ago or this year, you give me names, I can give you many names of people that absolutely don't like John McCain because they felt that he let the veterans down.
You've started a hotline for vets. John McCain's office says, look, we've got 5 full-time caseworkers. In this year alone, they say they've dealt with 2,000 cases for vets.
I hope you're not trying to make the case that the veterans are being properly taken care of.
I'm not. We've done tons of reporting. Like no, I'm just saying you're attacking John McCain's record. I'm asking specific.
Probably the most corrupt group in this country is the Veterans Administration. Now, you could say corrupt or incompetent. It's both.
Well, with that on the table, we're joined by